Phone's on vibrate? You're the only one that's usually has a problem with that. Mark, you ready?
Yep.
Yes. Follow up, Matt? We're all good? All good.
We're here for it.
Good morning, everyone. We're glad you're here. Welcome to the regular town council meeting of the town of Southern Shores, this gorgeous July 7th, 2026. If you'll please stand, we'll do our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll observe a moment of silence. Thank you. Excuse me. Council, we have an agenda in front of us. Are there any amendments, or is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Approved agenda. The consent agenda is pretty simple today. It consists of a couple of sets of minutes that were emailed out. Is there any discussion or questions about the consent agenda?
Nope.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent agenda approved. Today we have our assistant town manager, deputy town manager, excuse me, and planning director, Wes Haskett. Our town manager is not able to be with us today. So I'll kick it off to Wes. Good to see you, sir.
Thank you. Good morning, Mayor and members of council. With respect to the monthly report, I'll start with June permits for the Planning and Code Enforcement Department. There were 72 permits that were issued. 12 of those were zoning permits, 20 were building permits, 38 trade permits, and 2 lot disturbance demolition permits. The total amount of fees collected in June was $25,020.70. With respect to code enforcement, there were 3 warning citations mailed, 1 for a right-of-way obstruction and 2 for solid waste violations. Another item I wanted to touch on today is NCDOT. They are now accepting public comments on the 2028-2037 State Transportation Improvement Program Regional Impact and Division Needs Phase. On July 1st, NCDOT started their public comment period for the current round of transportation project prioritization. Throughout July until the end of the month, people can provide input that will help local transportation leaders understand what transportation projects matter to them and should be prioritized in their area. Citizens can indicate their priorities and submit comments on NCDOT's interactive prioritization map. And there's a link provided on the screen. We'll also share it on our website, ncdot.publicinput.com/P8map. They can also participate in an open house public meeting that's set to take place on July 13th from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock at the NCDOT Division 1 office located in Edenton at 113 Airport Drive. That meeting will be an informal gathering in which citizens can share their interests in transportation projects and ask questions of local NCDOT staff. Additional information will be on the town website today, southernshores-nc.gov/news. One project of note is in Dare County is spot ID H250310. And that is at the US 158 NC12 intersection right here. The project description states, quote, "Convert existing at-grade intersection to interchange to improve safety and mobility," end quote. The proposed project currently includes two conceptual options, and one of them consists of two overpasses or bridges that would allow NC-12 traffic to flow underneath US 158. We encourage citizens to review the project information for H250310 in the prioritization map and submit their comments to NCDOT. With respect to the Town Planning Board, their next regular meeting is scheduled for July 20th at 5 o'clock here in the Pitt Center. And the purpose of that meeting is for them to perform the duties of the Southern Shores Board of Adjustment, holding an evidentiary hearing to consider a variance application submitted by Janine Gertis to seek relief from the yard or setback requirements in Town Code Section 36-202D for a shed on property located at 132 Oyster Bed Lane. Any questions?
I have a comment. Is that okay?
Yes, absolutely.
I attended that meeting with Wes, and I was horrified that in fact, Wes was so astute that he picked this up prior to the meeting. But I was horrified to see the plans by NCDOT to build an overpass here at the intersection of 158 and 12. I cannot think of a less attractive introduction to the Outer Banks of North Carolina than to drive across the bridge and then go over an overpass that would have an underpass under it. And that is one of their proposals. And for lack of a better word, I'm not an engineer, but it's hidden in the middle of everything. It's to the tune of $36 million to correct a problem that I don't really understand and fix something that doesn't appear to be broken. Now there's a pub, and NCDOT, I think, made it pretty clear in the meeting, because I made it pretty clear I didn't think this would be very popular, and certainly with Southern Shores, and I don't think with Kitty Hawk. Frankly, if Wes hadn't picked this up, I don't know who else would have seen it.
Can't tell.
Yeah, we have the maps that were there, and I'll leave them out so people can see them. There are two options. One is the overpass, which they call a flyover. I guess flyover is more attractive, but it's an overpass. And then there's a second option that would be the reconfiguration of the road to facilitate traffic. I don't know if we need that either. But I would really encourage everyone to look at what's going to be posted on the website, and we need to get some feedback. We don't have a big crowd here. I know we have some news outlets that monitor these meetings. We need to get the word out that if you don't want an overpass right here, basically in front of Town Hall, we need to speak up. So I'm going to get busy with my email list, and I hope you'll get busy with yours and encourage people to speak out about this. That's my comment.
So just to add on, so Wes and staff are planning to do a press release today and advertise the link where people can submit comments. And this is just the first comment period. There also will be a second comment period at some point in the future. It's not clear when that is going to be.
I'm not sure the dates of a second public comment period, but right now they're accepting comments through the end of July.
Through the end of July.
We're going to post the information. If it's not already posted on the town's website, it'll be up there today.
Okay.
And we'll be sharing information in our upcoming newsletter as well.
Okay, upcoming newsletter. Perfect.
And maybe we could let the tourism board know also.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can't imagine the tourism board would be much in favor of this.
No, and I can't imagine the District 1 representative is much in favor either, who lives here.
So in addition to commenting, we'll try to keep everyone advised in terms of any other action that we think we can take. I just think changing a perfectly good intersection to an interchange doesn't help anything. So I don't understand why it's even on the list, the priority list. Seems like there's better things to do to spend $36 million on than that. So, okay. Thanks, Wes.
Yes, ma'am.
Anything else? Anybody else have questions for Wes? Okay. Now we'll hear from our police chief, Chief Cole. Good morning, sir.
Morning, Mayor, members of Town Council. The June 2026 report, as you can see up above, under the incidents, which are actual crimes reported, there were 22. Under criminal arrest, we had 12. Most of those were drug-related, and that included fentanyl and meth. And our K-9 alerted on several of those traffic stops. Let's see, citations. Officers conducted 140 traffic stops. They issued 43 written citations and another 87 warning citations. Ordinance violations, our community resource officer has been earning his keep. Handed out 70 ordinance violations, 67 of those were failure to display. Another 3 were parking in no parking zone. And we had 13 reportable motor vehicle accidents for the month of June. Just to let you know, we had additional overtime signed up, and that resulted in 11 different shifts that officers signed up for overtime, handed out another additional 23 citations. Most of those were on the cut-through areas. A lot of those were actually stop sign violations at East Dogwood, South Dogwood, North Dogwood. And that resulted in almost 50% of the calls for service for that. And that was just for the one day. That was for June 20th, which is a Saturday. So, yeah. Anyway, we're letting them know we're out there. So hopefully that's going to help a little bit. Just a couple of other things. Our 2 school resource officers, Salego and Brickhouse, are now state certified school resource officers. They attended, successfully completed the training that the state put on for them. Our 2 newest police officers, the 2 that we had hired as recruits, will be going solo probably within the next couple of weeks, which means they'll be out on their own, but there will be another officer in their own vehicle pretty much shadowing them for 2 or 3 weeks. And so we're excited about that. And 4th of July, even though this is the June report, for the 250th, I would say, thank God the wind was blowing southwest. That was a godsend right there. So yeah, there were a lot of fireworks, a lot more fireworks than there were police officers and firefighters to do an awful lot about it. But we were pretty fortunate, no major issues. You know, we had a lot of traffic issues and accidents, stuff like that, and some heated domestics and those types of things. But overall, considering everything, it was fairly uneventful. Thank you.
I'd say we were fortunate.
Very blessed, yes.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Chief Cole.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. Next, we'll hear from our fire chief, Chief Limbacher. Good morning, Ed.
Good morning, Mayor, Council. So for the month of June, fire department had 1 outside fire with 2 structure fires, 8 hazardous conditions, 52 medical calls or EMS calls. 25% was 25 calls were public service, which you can still see. We're still service oriented, which I know the mayor and I talked. We didn't want to lose our mission that we had under the 501c3. So you can see we're continuing our service-driven aspect of the department. Rescue calls, 5 of those. 1 was with the boat and 2 were elevator, people stuck in an elevator. And non-emergency was 13 for a total of 106 for the month, which that's about normal for June. You know, it's summertime, so that's the way things are. 2 Door Saver programs this month, and there'll be already 2 this month again. So that picked up with the advertisement, I think, so that worked well. And last year, we were at 85 calls, so we're a little ahead on the month, but we're still a little bit behind for the year. So pretty much normal stuff for us. Any questions on that report there? Okay. I did want to start putting you in just letting you know the things that Jim, our fire marshal, is doing, Fire Marshal Davidson. And this is very important stuff because it's keeping our crew safe by making sure people are doing things correctly. And luckily with our community, everybody wants to do things correctly. So it's not really a big deal when they ask them, hey, can you fix this or fix that? So I think that it's going well. And just real quickly, did 3 construction permits for fire extinguishing systems, fire alarm detection systems 2, construction visit 2, imminent hazards, which is one that's important to me because they found things that were immediately needed addressed. And generally, like I said, people are more than happy to do it. So, and then 10 pre-plans because he's working on building out our pre-plan system in First Do, which is our new software from a couple of years ago. So we're finally getting into that. So any questions on that? The 4th for us was just really just kind of busy, not really anything of any note, but like the chief said, so kind of normal for this time of year.
That's good. More good news. Thank you,
Yep.
Chief. Sounds like we got through the 4th without a lot of incidents on the law enforcement or fire side, so that's really good.
I agree.
Thank you, sir. All right, next we'll hear from our town attorney, Philip Hornthal.
It's nice to be with you guys. Happy late 4th. Nothing to report.
Thank you, sir. And now we'll get Wes to catch us up about the Bike and Pedestrian Grant Award.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning. Good morning again. The manager had one item under his report on the agenda today, and that is acceptance of a North Carolina Department of Transportation Integrated Mobility Division Planning Grant Award. If y'all will recall, in April of this year, you all authorized staff to apply for a bicycle and pedestrian planning grant through NCDOT IMD, and we're pleased to learn that our application was accepted. A comprehensive bicycle or pedestrian network plan allows a municipality to set a vision for bicycle or pedestrian transportation in their community, plan for a bicycle or pedestrian network, and identify priority bicycle or pedestrian projects. Creation of a bicycle or pedestrian network plan is likely to be the first step to implementation of bicycle and pedestrian projects and supports a more bicycle friendly and walk friendly environment. So not only is this an update or report, but there's also, we're requesting, staff is requesting that you all authorize the town manager to execute the municipal reimbursement agreement and deposit our share in the amount of up to $6,000 so that we can move forward with this application or this grant. So the next steps would be, if you all were to authorize the $6,000 today, we would execute the agreement between the town and NCDOT. Once we receive it from them, we would deposit the $6,000 or up to $6,000, and then we would be assigned a consultant. And Kitty Hawk, the town of Kitty Hawk, they received this same grant, and they're currently in the process of working on their plan with a consultant. So one of our public works directors working with them on that. It may be possible to be assigned the same consultant that's working with Kitty Hawk. They would have be more familiar with our area possibly. So that's what we were requesting today with respect to that.
Didn't we have previously, some years ago, a pedestrian bike safety?
We did. We received a
Was it
grant.
20?
It was 2012, I
12?
believe,
Okay.
around there.
So it's been 14 years.
It's been a while. That plan was never adopted, and that was also with a grant. It was not this same program. I think I heard that division or that part of DOT no longer exists where we received that previous grant. But this is another bike and pedestrian plan. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And certainly, Matt's corridor committee, we talk about pedestrian and bicycle safety improvements for the corridor. a lot.
Developing this plan was part of the
Yeah,
And
this,
task list.
It would,
this would be a task or
Yeah.
recommendation as part, that's included in the draft
right.
plan at the moment, I believe.
I'll move to authorize the manager to execute municipal reimbursement agreement and deposit the local shared amount of $6,000.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further questions or discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no.
Thank you, Wes, for doing
Thank
that.
you.
Motion approved. This is really good step forward. And this won't be just limited to the corridor.
No,
It'll
it
be for
won't.
the whole town,
Yeah.
but it will actually, marry up with what some of the goals of the corridor enhancement. Thank you. Plan, which is great.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's one of our first action items.
Okay. Thank you, Wes. Now it's time for general public comment. We have a couple of folks signed up. Sean Mulligan, if you'll come up and tell us your name and where you live. And the lights will tell you green, yellow, and red.
Can I give each one of y'all
Sure.
this and then? Easier.
Thanks.
I don't know who number two is, so.
Oh, no,
Oh, she is here.
he is.
Number two.
He's number two.
Yeah, we're just here, we're just here.
It's all the same.
Oh, okay. Well, I was number two for a long time.
You can relate to number two. That's good.
So I'm back here. As you can see it, Beach Nourishment again. The page I handed out, you see the sandbar was basically 20 to 30 yards out, fairly linear with gaps for the outflow at the outgoing tide. And it's always been varied, it's never been a straight line. And that's just nature doing what nature does. If you get in an airplane and you see something in a straight line, it's man-made. If it's not in a straight line, it's natural. 2022, we did a straight line. Now, I had no idea that the sandbar would leave. I mean, I haven't been around, that's the first we've done beach nourishment, and I haven't been around areas that did beach nourishment much. But we basically had no sandbar. So what you had were the waves coming up, for the most part, without a natural barrier, just breaking on the beach. So now we are in 2026, and we got a sandbar, and it's 20 to 30 yards out, but it's kind of exaggerated. It's a little bit different. It's still migrating and still changing. It hadn't gotten back to where it was in 2021, because we have areas that you can, at high tide, you can walk out that's maybe this deep from the shore, and then when at low tide, it's like this deep. It's great for fishing and surfing. It's been pretty good. It's kind of caused when we have had some swell, it makes the riptides a little more dangerous because it's a little more exaggerated. I think next year, it's a guess on my part, but next year it's going to look a lot more like it did in 2021 because it's just going back to what it was before. That's just what it's going to do. So, what I'm trying to say is I'm not against beach nourishment. I just would like it to be done different. And I think if we could put the sand down and contour it to what it's contoured to when you start, okay? Nature will move the sand around this way and that. The whole time we have it, we should have sandbars. If we have sandbars, sandbars kind of act as a buffer against the waves. So the waves break out, they break down, and then you just have the whitewater running up on the beach. So it's total speculation and guess on my part, but I honestly think if you did it that way, it's a win for me. It's a win for anyone who surfs and fish. I think the tourists like it better because they're out there on the boogie boards and all that this summer when they haven't been able to do that. It's hard to take that pole and get that out of people, but you kind of see that. And I just think it's a win for everybody. And I'd like to at least to be explored. And I know it's different and that people don't like to do change. The easiest thing is status quo. This is what we've always done. So that's all I'm looking for, okay? And I'll be here in September. Oh, and then I'd like to put the beach nourishment off a year, just to see where we're at next year. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. Next, we have Beth Joseph.
Hi, I'm fairly new to the area. Thank you for a chance to make a comment, but I live right smack opposite 6th Avenue on Duck Road. And I was really wanting to familiarize myself with what the bicycle pedestrian plan was going to be, because as you guys know, I'm estimating about 30 properties that are along that area that have no access to a sidewalk. So it's not a matter of a crosswalk, it's a matter of any access to a sidewalk. And it's with the speed limit change, there's also a bend in the road there. It's very difficult to see the traffic coming. So I just wanted to make sure that the town realized that it's definitely very dangerous for people crossing the road. Not opposed to the speed limit change at all. I understand the reasons for that. But we've now got a good portion of our community that has no access to a sidewalk or to a crosswalk. And hopefully in this new plan that I'm hearing about, that will be addressed. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Beth. Okay.
Mayor.
Sir.
Possible for me to do a public comment?
Yes, sir. Come on up. Tell us who you are and where you live.
Van Price, I live across the street on 18 Ocean Boulevard, and I am very much in favor of beach nourishment. And the key, as illustrated going many years back, is having that sandbar and the dune, and I call that the sandbox. We just got to make sure that there's plenty of sand in that, and so that we can prevent in a storm any kind of damage that will hit the road and also hit all the homes. Very much in favor. We also need, because of mobilization costs, you have to keep the timeline with it is. So it's still doing it with Duck, Southern Shores, Kill Devil Hills, and Kitty Hawk. So we have to be able to work through that. I think it's a great program. It's made the beach really, really good. And if you look across the street, you can see that all we're doing is helping Mother Nature protect itself. Thank you.
Thanks, Van. Before I move on, anyone else? I forgot to ask that question. Okay. Next up is old business. This is on continued discussion of setbacks. It's on, there's some information on page 4. Let's see. We had discussed setbacks as that related specifically to a series of zoning text amendments, none of which seemed to be overly popular with the council at the time. That's not to say that there won't be some sort of future proposed change or consideration of change, but the ones that we were presented were not something that we were ready to accept. So let's see, Mayor Pro Tem, you wanted to maybe talk a little bit about how this could move forward at a future date, perhaps?
Yeah, I had spoken a bit in the last 2 meetings about this, and I think some of the discussion gets derailed a little bit when we're talking specifically pool cabanas and the entertainment spaces, and we're not talking so much about some of the practicalities of, bike storage and things of that nature, and whether or not what the difficulties are, whether it's strictly to the side setback or it's to the rear setback, what type of structure. Our definitions don't define anything behind accessory structure, so that's why the ZTA was written as encompassing as it was. But I think a larger discussion on maybe everybody's comfort level for our setbacks, go through a list. There's a beehive, okay, that kind of thing, because we have a very restrictive regime currently, and I think if you drive through town, as we've all noticed, there's quite a few violations present. In West gets quite a few questions about it and placement of sheds. Maybe a retreat style discussion is a better set than a monthly council meeting.
Yeah, maybe talk about it at a future retreat and maybe have some pictures of things, so that we can kind of all have a better idea of what we're talking about.
I guess my thought is with that is I don't think we're going to be able to give any clear instruction to Wes at the outcome.
I
of
don't
the
think
discussion
we're,
today.
yeah, we're ready to make an ask to staff at this point. But like I said, last meeting, maybe sometime in the future.
I would agree with that. And or a lot of the structures you're talking about, are they grandfathered? Are they from? I
If
mean,
they
when
were
was the last-
non-compliant
When was the
at the
last
time of
time
construction,
the
they're not.
code, when was the last time that the code was changed? And it could be, I was kind of vocal, I know that. I counted the steps. But from the utility, I call it Apollo 13 on the side of our house to the neighbors. And it was right at 15 feet with the lattice work.
Yeah.
And so, and that was in 2008. And last night I listened to the neighbor's air conditioner, who's about 26 feet away. So that's our problem, okay? Not that, but if it was closer, I think the noise would be louder. But I'm open to discussion if there's a way to solve this, because there seemed to be a lot of concern among the building community as well.
I don't think so. I think
No?
we're really just getting feedback from the owners.
Homeowners.
Like, I mean, there was a lot of discussion last month about like, new construction maxing out. It's not where it shows up. It shows up in renovation and repairs and things like that, where
Yeah.
stuff is already in a sort of a non-conforming status. And
The builders are reflecting the homeowners and the lot owners and everybody, and I understand that. And when anybody's building, they want the moon.
Yeah.
I mean,
But it's
I
not-
would too. And so I guess just something that's reasonable is what I think what we're, I'm open to discussion on it. I mean, I really
Well,
am. So I think pictures and all that may be helpful too.
Well, definitional things. I mean, I know
Yeah.
both of you express noise. I mean, some of these structures there's no noise accompaniment to
Yeah.
it. So, but the phrase accessory structure accompanies so many things. So.
Well, I'll just reiterate, I'm very opposed to changing the side setbacks. I've lived through those renovation things, and I was very happy that the structure next to me couldn't be any closer than 15 feet. Because, yes, the owners, property owners and residents are two different things. I think maybe when you're building something that you're going to rent out, you're trying to get huge. When you live here, you want some neighborhood ambiance, and you don't want that as much. So I'm open, particularly the back setbacks. That doesn't really affect my property, so I don't have a really good feeling for back setbacks. I'm certainly willing, but I'd like to hear from residents, or not just the builders, with all due respect to the builders and the owners that they represent. I'd like to hear from our town people, is there a real interest in changing the setbacks? And so I think before we move on to a
Just
retreat.
rephrase that, I would say, I don't think there's any interest in changing the setbacks. I don't think any change should apply to major building structures or anything like that. I think it's opening up some of the restrictions that are, I mean, you can't have a garden pergola in your rear setback right now, an open air. I mean, just an arbor can't be back there. So things of that nature, I don't think there's any desire to change that. And maybe a discussion of exempting certain things from.
Well, again, some sort of public hearing and address it in a retreat.
We could always have a mayor's chat,
Mayor's chat.
that's focused
Mayor's
on
chat,
that
that's a good idea.
particular subject area and advertise it, and then people can come and we can just
Right.
talk about it. And
Right.
council members can come and they can hear what people are saying.
Mark can bring pictures.
Yeah,
Audio
why not? Why
recordings.
not? I mean, the guy across the way put up a shed, and I was trying to figure out what the coverage was. I'm sure it was legal. And it's a beautiful shed, okay? And the guy down the street put a swimming pool in. For the life of me, I didn't mark off the lot. It was one of the smallest lots on the city, and I was trying to figure out how he got that lot in there, what the house he's got, and the setback from the canal. Okay, because when I drive by, his pool a lot closer than mine. So, and that's a new house, so I'm just trying to figure it out, how it works, And so anyway, we'll just let's open it up.
Okay,
Okay.
sounds good.
But I like that. I did hear you say, Matt, that we don't want to change the setbacks. It's just the language in there.
Yeah, I don't have any. I don't want
Okay.
any houses closer to each
So
other.
we don't want a
or anything
tiki
that.
house
I
like
just-
somebody says.
I worry a little bit less about the definition of things. I mean, I think
Yeah.
it's, my neighbor's house is a foot from the property line. Their HVAC stand was on my property line for a period, on my property for a period of time. I mean, I would spend a month in Europe where I'm grateful I didn't complain about setbacks, because it's what built the community. So it's, you know.
But they don't have air conditioning.
They do have air conditioning. They hang on the side of the building, but and they drip on you when you're in this yard. So, but I mean, that's part of what bringing people together, I guess. I do think what's special about Southern Shores in many ways is the separation of the houses and the open space. So I mean, I just deal with it probably more day to day than some others in terms of how restrictive our guidelines are, and some of them are a little ludicrous. I mean, they defy logic for the way like a young family might use their backyard, for instance, and that's the flexibility that I would like to have a continued discussion about. So,
Agree.
Cool. Okay, so I think we'll just move forward
Yeah,
with
we'll figure out scheduling.
those ideas now expressed. All right, the second discussion item was, we had talked about this at the last meeting when we made an appointment to the planning board. This is on page 5. And we're talking about adding a policy. And maybe Wes, could you kick us off with some of what we got here in the book on page 5?
Yes, ma'am. I think at a previous meeting, you all had discussed the possibility of a committee or a board or a commission term limits. For example, our Historic Landmarks Commission, they're appointed board or appointed commission. The planning board, they're appointed by you all as well. There's an entry corridor committee. Over the years, there have been other committees. And I think you all had discussed the idea of putting into place limits, some sort of term limits. Like right now, planning board, Historic Landmarks Commission, members' terms are 3 years. They're staggered. And historically, members who have been appointed and have been on either one of those boards or bodies, if they express an interest to continue serving when their term limit comes up, they have been reappointed. So I think you all were kind of just wondering if you wanted to explore the idea of the possibility of putting together something for you all to consider as far as term limits go for appointed bodies in the town.
Commissions and boards. Got it.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
appreciate that. I say it most times during these meetings. I served on the planning board for 8 years. That seems like a long time. I think having term limits for boards and commissions is something that we ought to consider. So I'm in favor of it. It's something I think that would be good for the community. We could, instead of it being more like a seemingly closed door for people to participate, it would be more like an open door for people to participate. So I think it would be a good idea.
Those positions are all volunteer, right?
They are,
And they're not paid at all. Is that correct?
correct.
Okay.
Both the Landmark Commission and the
And the planning board.
Planning Board, and now Wes mentioned the Entry Corridor Committee. That's sort of, it's not really enough.
It's on the standing.
Does
it's a
does
town council sanctioning committee, but it
It's
has a
sanctioned.
sunlight or sunset. I mean,
At some point, it's just going to go away.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas the Landmarks Commission, no, and the Planning Board.
Those are
no.
established.
Those are established. Yeah, those would be the differences. Yeah.
Do we know how those boards feel about this issue?
No.
I mean, I just wonder, like on the planning board, there seems to be, I'm all for term limits, but there seems to be a real, the experience of being on the planning board, I think is really valuable. So before we take a step, I'd like to see what they see as the pros and cons.
I would like to take a step of directing the staff to come back to us with a proposed policy. that's based on the statutory authority and
And other municipalities.
and what other municipalities have in place.
If I may add, Mayor?
Yes.
So right now, the terms for the Planning Board and the Historic Landmarks Commission, they are established in the town code. But I have seen other jurisdictions that do it in their rules of procedure. And like you said, as a policy. But if you all are going to ask staff to put something together, I would suggest that we not limit it to just policy, that it could also be, it could be a town code amendment, or it could be rules of procedure and policy.
Okay.
So I'd rather not limit it to keep our options open.
Keep our options open.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, and if we could run those proposed policies in front of those committees prior to it coming back, that would be important to me.
Okay.
For instance, I think on the historic landmarks, sometimes they have trouble getting people to just be on the committee. So,
I
Well,
think
and-
the mayor had suggested, potentially phrasing where the council could waive a term limit for whatever. What was the thought? Just have some flexibility for it, if that kind of thing arose.
Yeah, that's something we could consider. I mean, if there are no applicants when term limits are up, is the term limit, the term limit cap is waived, or?
Yeah.
There are different ways we could look at it.
So do we have consensus?
I'd like to see something.
We'd like to see something.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'd like, along the lines of what Wes
I'll-
said,
I mean, I'll-
something that's kind of open. I mean, essentially, the council term limits are determined by the voters.
Correct,
If they choose to run, and if you choose not to run.
correct.
So I kind of see, there could be some folks that this is a community of volunteers. That's what our monkey
Yes.
is and all that. And so we do want the volunteers. We don't want to discourage them, but you don't want to create where there's a group that's closed and it's in there
Right.
forever too.
Right.
I'm with that.
Encourage the engagement so somebody doesn't think they're going to sit as an alternate for 6
Yeah.
years, which is what's happened the whole time I've been on council.
Right.
I mean, I think one alternate has moved up the chain
Yeah.
in the 2 terms I've been here. So
Yeah.
Right.
it's a,
Yeah, I just think it would be healthier for us to have standing committees,
Yeah.
boards that are, where we have new people coming on. And
Well, I
New
think-
ideas.
I'll say my dad was on it for I think 2 terms, and he was with me. He's like, I've done it. It's time for somebody else's.
Yeah.
to come through.
I should have followed his lead.
Yeah.
But probably the planning committee is really tough because those ordinances you got to interpret them. You got to be,
Well, and.
you got to be a judge.
And certainly, we are fully
mean, it's
capable
hard.
of
Board
providing
Yeah.
education and training
Yeah,
to get people comfortable with the job, so to
Right.
speak, the volunteer job.
Yeah.
Because, agreed, it does take some time
There are rules.
and so forth. So, do we
Okay.
need a motion, or can we by consensus direct staff? Okay.
consensus.
And I'm sorry, I got distracted. Did you mention we could have language in there about whatever we decide to do, we need to make sure that there are no negative consequences, like if there isn't anyone to serve? Okay, I apologize. Okay, I think we're done with that. I have to take a brief recess, and we will be back in just a couple of minutes. All right, our next our new business item is a beach nourishment presentation by Mr. Ken Wilson. Good morning, Ken. It's good to see
Good
you.
morning. It's good to be up here.
And,
Thanks for the invite.
We are ready to listen.
All right. Well, the goal today is to kind of give you an update. We performed our annual surveys last month in early June of all 4 beach towns, and we've kind of been on a mission to update all the towns. There's been a lot of discussion about what to plan for in 2027. Do all the towns need to move forward with beach nourishment? Should we plan for 5 and 6 and 7 years moving out? And so when we've been briefing the towns over the last year or so, we knew that this next survey that was going to be done in the summer of 2026 was kind of our last look at all of the data to make some final decisions on what would be done for 2027. So we moved quickly to try to get this data processed and provide you all some updates as quick as possible. So that's what I want to do today. Kind of the framing of all of this is that probably in the next 2 to 3 months, we want to be ready to put these projects out for bid for construction. So we're thinking sometime in September, advertising those, getting bids back in October. That schedule fits in what we've done in previous years to where we've been out in front of the market, made sure that, as much of these dredge contractors had capacity in their schedule so that we could hit the date of 2027. So that's the reason for a little bit of the urgency here. There aren't decisions that have to be made today, but by that September timeframe, we want to make sure that we've got what we need. Probably want some feedback from you all over the next month or so, so that we can move forward and have those packages ready in September. So just a little bit of context on why this briefing is important. Setting the stage, again, we like to go over these project goals. So originally the goal of the project, the goal of the beach management plan here in Southern Shores was to provide a reasonable level of storm damage reduction, to mitigate for that long-term erosion that can threaten public and private development and recreational opportunities, as well as biological resources, and maintain a healthy beach that provides sufficient usable beach. And so this is just a figure that's in a lot of the monitoring reports. It shows the entire extent of the Southern Shores area. But for the purposes of monitoring these projects and understanding that there are different goals in different sections of towns, we kind of broke this graphic up into 3 sections. So you have the northern section, which is basically everything north of 4th Avenue. You have that central section, which is approximately from 4th Avenue to just a little bit south of Chickahawk. And then the southern section runs around Chickahawk down to the Kitty Hawk town line. And so everything south of 4th Avenue was designed, the original beach project was designed to increase the amount of sand and dune there to provide a sufficient level of storm damage reduction. We've run some models and so forth, similar to the way that we've designed that for the other towns. And that's how we got to how much sand was required in that southern and central area. Along the entire area, we want to mitigate goal number 2. We want to mitigate for that long-term erosion. So we want to track what's going on along the entire town and make sure that we're keeping up with any kind of erosion that's taking place. And then in the northern part, the primary focus of the goal of the original project in 2022 was to maintain that beach at a sufficient usable beach width. All right, so let's get into project performance. These are just a couple of aerial drone shots that were taken actually last week. I was up here for some meetings in Duck and grabbed these photos as well. So this is looking at from the very north end of town. You can see that call out is the Hillcrest access area there. And then this is another shot from around the Kitty Hawk Pier looking north. So you can see that Pelican Watch community there. For those of you that were on the board or involved back in 2017, 2016, I mean, thinking about what those Pelican Watch houses look like and the urgency to put something up in front of them back in 2016, that's a very comforting picture. All right, so let's dive into some numbers here. Project performance updates. So The central column there is essentially the tracking of volume changes that have been measured since the 2022 project was completed. So when that project was completed, the surveyors came out, they surveyed the conditions of the project. That was basically fixed a baseline in place. And every year when we come out here to do our annual survey, it's kind of like your annual checkup. We want to get new numbers on where how the project is performing and kind of looking at trends. So if you look at the entire point of time from when that baseline survey was done to the most recent survey that was just done last month, in the northern section, we've actually gained 177,500 cubic yards of sand. In the central section, we have actually lost sand from when the project was constructed, which is expected. You would expect that some erosion in there of about 60,000 cubic yards. And then in the southern section, while the most recent 12-month period, we have lost sand, the net from that original baseline survey to the most recent in June shows that there's still a net positive gain in that southern section of about 50,000 cubic yards. If you add all that up, you're looking at that bottom number. So net all the way across the town, we've gained about 170,000 cubic yards since the project was built 4 years ago. If you look on the right-hand side, what we're comparing that to is the amount of sand that was actually placed for the project. So at the northern area, in that northern section north of 4th Avenue, during the project, there was a placement of about 124,000 cubic yards. Since the project, another 177,500 cubic yards has, accreted into that area. So the central section where we've lost some volume, you can see that we placed about 580,000. We've lost about 58,000. So that's easy math. That's about 10% of what was placed there. And then again, same trend in the southern section. We placed about 343,000 and we've gained 50,000 over that four-year period. Okay. These are kind of the same pattern here, but this is looking at actual rates. So we measure that in cubic yards per foot per year. I know that's sometimes hard to kind of visualize, but don't worry so much about the units. We want to kind of see the trends here. So on the right-hand side, these are the values that were measured from the very first survey that our firm did of Southern Shores back in December 2017, leading up to the last survey before the project was constructed. So in that 5-ish year period, we were seeing a trend of a gain of about 5.7 cubic yards per foot per year. And then in the southern and the central section, over that same 5-year period, it was almost unchanged. The volume was unchanged through that area. If you look over here in the center, now we see those updated since the project has been constructed. We've gained at a rate that's more or less twice of what was measured in the previous 5 years. In the central section, we are seeing a loss of about 2 cubic yards per year. And then in the southern section, we're seeing a greater increase in that rate than the previous 5 years. And then these are just the averages all the way across the board. All right. And then this last table, same sort of format as the last slide, but what we're showing here is just over the last 12 months. So all of this has been, positive volume gains. But when you look at the trend line, the trend is starting to change. And here we can see that over the last 12 months, it has been fairly stable in the north. 0.2 is essentially no change at all in the plus or minus. The central section was losing about 15.3 cubic yards per foot per year. And the southern area has lost about 4.3 cubic yards per year. On average, across the board, in the last year, we were losing at about 9.1 cubic yards per foot per year. Okay. This graphic is essentially tracking. I mentioned that we survey these beaches basically every year, and you're getting a new set of data every year. And so this is kind of a graphic that shows the tracking of the trend from year to year to year to year. So let's focus in on this red line first. What we've done is we've come in and basically set our initial survey that was done in 2017 as our baseline. So we just set that volume to 0, and then and then if the volume goes down, if there's a loss, that red dot is going to come down on that graphic. If you're gaining sand from survey to survey, you're going to see an upward tick. And so this is essentially what happened in the 5 years prior to building the project. There were 2 years of loss. There were a couple of years of gain leading right up to 2022. This big spike here is the actual construction of the project in 2022. And then what's kind of put us ahead of the curve for the rest of the time is that between 2022 and 2023, there was actually a pretty significant gain in volume over that first year. The gentleman, Mr. Mulligan, that was in here earlier, talked a little bit about the bars and the way that the project is built. And we've shown graphics in the past that when you build these projects, you are pushing the beach out. You're putting a very gentle slope on that sand that's going out into the water. And it does make sense that that amount of sand would cover up the existing bar at the time. I think he mentioned like 20 to 30 feet out is kind of where he felt like the bar was. Typically, if we place the amount of volume that was placed in 2022, yes, that sand would cover up the bar and create that slope. And you need a certain amount of wave action to move that sand from where we put it into the deeper water and recreate that bar. What's interesting here is from 2022 to 2023, we actually gained a fair amount of sand. And that's pretty true all the way across the other 4 towns, Currituck County. It seems like it's more wave influence, that we were just in a positive period where there was more sand coming in from offshore and kind of benefiting the system. There weren't very many storms during that period to pull that sand off of the beach and reform it. And I think that's probably why the project kind of stayed. And I mean, I've heard this from other surfers as well, that the bars didn't come back very, very quickly. It took a couple of years for them to come back. And I think that anomalous kind of jump up of the volume is part of the story there. It's kind of unexpected. We don't typically see that in a lot of the projects, but to the benefit of the project, that 1 year period was a pretty big gain. But you can see after that 2022 to 23 period, we have seen kind of 1 year of stability, not a whole lot of change. But over the last 2 years, we are seeing that trend start to come down. I won't go into a whole lot of detail, but the other 3 lines here are essentially just looking at the trend in each of those other 3 areas. So you can see the trend in the north, in the central, and in the south as well. All right, so we show this graphic a lot. Basically, once the project is built, once you've had enough wave action to move some of that sand that was built out there, or that was placed out there, out into the bar system and kind of re-equilibrate the system, you're left with a situation where you have a certain amount of volume that's out on the beach that is the design that's there to protect the beach from a certain storm event. And then you have this additional sand in front of it that is there to basically absorb the long-term erosion that you would expect to experience on a east-facing beach here in North Carolina and the Outer Banks. All right, so if we think about that concept of design versus the extra sand that's there to basically deal with this long-term erosion, what we've done here is if we've recreated that graphic that I showed, that cumulative graphic, but I want to point out that this curve is showing just the volume of sand south of 4th Avenue, okay? Because that's the section of the beach where we're designing it for storm damage protection, as opposed in the northern area, we were really focused on just trying to maintain a certain width of dry sand. So this blue line basically represents all of the volume change that's occurred south of 4th Avenue since the original survey. What you'll notice is the other thing that's different about this curve is this horizontal black dashed line. That represents the amount of volume you would need to have in the system to have the design beach in place. So that previous graphic I just showed with the red arrow, that amount of sand, I'll just go up. The amount of sand that's shown there in that design beach, as long as we stay above that black dash line on the next slide, we have all of the volume needed to hold that design beach. Okay. So where the curve is above that dash line, on average across the area south of 4th Avenue, we have our design intact. So what you see again is that big jump after the project was built from 2022 to 2023, and then in the area south of 4th Avenue, even over that period from 23 to 24, there was a slight loss again to 25, and then most recently that rate has changed. This rate represents about a loss of about 11.7 cubic yards per foot per year. So we've projected a couple of lines off of where we are now in 2026 to illustrate some things. The project was originally designed when we came up with the volume that we would need for advanced fill. So those green, those green arrows, basically the extra sand that's shown there. What we designed for the Southern Shores project was we anticipated a loss of about 3 cubic yards per foot per year. All right. And so that red line basically represents, if we take the data from now and project that out at a rate of 3 cubic yards per foot per year, how long would it take us to fall below that design line there? And you could see that it would go out to 2032, maybe 2034 is when we'd hit, or 2033 is when we'd hit that line. But we've also plotted a couple other projections here. So the green line is essentially the rate that we have lost sand since that first anomalous year from 22 to 23. So from 23, 24, 25, 26, if I draw a line showing that trend that's occurred from 23 to 26, it sort of follows this 5.3 cubic yards per foot per year. And if that trend continues, you can see it's not perfectly linear. Some years are more or less. Then we would get ourselves into a position where somewhere between where we got 2030 and 2030, or 2029 and 2030 is when we would hit that design life. The last line here that I wanted to show is just the unpredictable nature of these projects. You know, we like to measure long term and look at trends over multiple years. You get yourself in a lot of trouble when you're just looking at one particular year, because a lot of change can happen in that year. But you know, if there was a similar situation of what we just experienced from 25 to 26, you know, that would put us at this point of another loss of 11.7 cubic yards per foot per year. We didn't project that out, but you know, clearly we'd be a lot closer to that design line. So what do we do with all this information? What we've done here is we've taken those same two projections of losing at 3 cubic yards per foot per year and losing at 5.3 cubic yards per year. And we've projected the amount of sand that we are recommending being placed next year for the 2027 project on our timeline. So this jump would be the next project, you know, resetting the baseline. This is a volume that's based on that 3 cubic yards per foot per year and a 5-year nourishment cycle. But what you can see is if we project that same rate out, you know, we could go 7 years and we would still be well above that design line, even if we only place the volume that is supposedly needed for the 5 years. So if we do the same thing, we still place the same volume. Now we're looking at the green line, the same volume that's needed to last 5 years. Even if we lost at this 5.3 cubic yards per foot per year, which again is the trend basically from 2023 to 2026, even if we lost at that rate, this project would hold up to 5 years, really closer to 6 years at that 2031. And so both of these scenarios is based on when I came up here the last time presented, we had volumes of how much it would take to hold the line for 5 years, for 6 years, or for 7 years. All of these scenarios are only looking at that smallest volume, the volume that we originally projected for 5 years. But what it's showing is that even if you place that minimum value of 5 years, it looks like, based on, the projection that actually occurs, that you're probably going to be able to take that out to 6 or maybe even 7 years. Okay, that was all the area south of 4th Avenue. Got a quick slide to talk about what's going on north of 4th Avenue up in that northern section. So the original goal of that project up there, we talked about trying to maintain a minimum usable beach width. There's a section in the beach management plan that talks about how that was defined. Essentially, it's based on a contour or a distance between two contours on the beach, and we can measure that distance based on any of our surveys. And the goal was to try to achieve a minimum width of that distance between those two contours of about 84 feet. So essentially what we were trying to do is go from the wet dry line up to the toe of the dune, and we wanted a beach that was about 84 feet wide from the wet dry line up to the toe of the dune. So in 2022 and 2023, you'll remember there were kind of two events where sand was placed up in that northern area. Combined, those two events placed about 124,000 cubic yards. 58,000 cubic yards of that 124 was actually added in that May 2023 Beachville construction. There was so when I talk about the advanced fill versus the design fill, we only placed enough sand in that area to try to achieve that beach width, because the trend leading up to that showed that area was gaining sand. And so we only built the design. We didn't even place advanced fill up in that area because, again, the trend was positive there. And so we have, looking now at the latest data, we have now measured that an additional 177,500 cubic yards has been accreted or added to that northern section since the 2022 project was built. So we added 124, and nature has added another 177.5 since that time. So if we look at all the way across the profiles that fall up in that area and we average that distance, we are sitting at about 93.4 feet wide up there in the northern area, where the goal was to hit 84 feet. Okay. I think we were talking to Cliff last week, and Cliff and Wes both. I think we went back and looked at the profiles. That is an average, that 93.4. I think there was one profile in that northern area where it fell below 84. I think it was like in the 75 or 76 foot range, but on average, we're ahead of the game. Okay, so looking at the four towns projects all together, we are still similar. Right at this point in time, what we're tentatively planning is that all the projects, the length of those projects would be the same as what they were during the 2022 project. Same area in Duck, same area in Kildare Hills, Kitty Hawk, same area in Southern Shores at this point in time. We are looking at changing the fill densities. That second bullet point simply just means that, we've shown here today that all the towns, the area along the towns don't erode at the same rate. So we vary the amount of sand that might go in the northern, the central, or the southern based on those fill or based on those erosion rates. We are still looking at how to mix and match whether or not we want to build this project just a plan to build it for another 5 years and come back in 2032, or if we can extend these projects out to 6 or 7 years. Right now, we're looking at a total volume for all four towns combined somewhere in the 2.4 to 2.8 range. That's compared to the previous projects. The one in 2017 was almost 4 million. The one in 22-23 was about 3 million. So we would be looking at less volume overall, which hopefully would mean a shorter construction period. And we're also looking at an additional borrow area, which probably mostly has to deal with the town of Duck. This kind of shows that new borrow site. So this green area here is the area that more or less all of the sand for the previous projects have come from. We've actually enlarged this area a little bit little bit more based on some surveys that were done in 23 and 24. We've also added these 2 additional sites where sand could be dredged and placed on the beach. And then the one that could have a fairly substantial cost savings for the town of Duck is this E8 borrow site that's located a little bit north of the town of Duck, but much closer than having to pull all that sand from these other 2 borrow areas and bring it to Duck. So that's something that'll be a little different about this upcoming project. Okay. So these are the latest numbers that we've got for volumes and for cost for all 4 of the towns. These have all been updated with new projections based on some recent cost estimates that have come in for other Dare County projects. But one thing, I think the last time I showed this graphic, the upper panel there is basically showing the difference in price if we were to place the volume needed for a 5-year project versus a 6-year project. And the bottom panel shows you the difference in the cost of placing the volume needed for a 5-year project versus a 7-year project. However, one of the things that we've done now is, because those projections are so healthy for Southern Shores, Kitty Hawk is in a similar situation to where you all are, where their projections, when you project out, they're pretty far ahead of the curve as well. And so what we've done here is we're showing the same volume, this minimum volume of what we've been projecting for the 5-year project. We show that in this column for the 5-year. We show the same number for the 6-year. And we also show the same number for the 7-year, because it's not really recommended at the rates that we're seeing right now to place additional volume. We believe with that minimum 5-year volume, you should be able to get 6 or 7 years out of that. So we're showing the same volume, and you can see the cost or Southern Shores portion of that cost across the board. The reason that those numbers aren't exactly the same, even though the volumes are the same, if you're paying really close attention here, which I know Matt is over there, is because a portion of this cost is based on that mobilization cost. And that mobilization cost is not just divided 4 ways. It's divided based on the volume of sand each town puts out there. And so because in the 6-year scenario, the town of Duck is placing almost 100,000 cubic yards more than they would have in the 5-year scenario, their percentage of the mobilization actually goes up a little bit more. So they're absorbing more of that mobilization, whereas because your volume is staying the same, your portion of the mobilization goes down a little bit. So if you're wondering how you could go out 6 and 7 years and the project costs a little bit less, that's why those numbers do what they do. All right, I think this is kind of the wrap up here. Next steps would be determine the project specific elements. Primarily what we're trying to dial in here is which maintenance interval to plan for, the 5, the 6, or the 7. The second bullet point, the use of the borrow area E8 north of Duck, that's more of a discussion between the town of Duck and Dare County, some discussions with Currituck County as well. But based on recent conversations, I think we probably are going to move forward with the potential use of that E8 for the town of Duck. Again, this is that same graphic. Additional next steps would be finalizing those design recommendations for the 2027 project. So we'd like to do that by August into September. We want to be able to finalize those construction plans and specs by September. That will allow us to solicit bids between September and October, and ultimately try to award that contract and have the contractor locked in by November prior to the holidays. But we do anticipate that the construction period would be next year between May and October of 2027. And that is all I've got. Be happy to take some questions.
Would Duck still have to mobilize at Hillcrest?
That's a good question. They, as you all probably know, they purchased a property up in an oceanfront property in the town of Duck or along Bufflehead Road. I think that was done maybe in 2023. And the reason for that was specifically to provide them an access to be able to bring equipment on and off of the beach up there. They have maintained the house that was on that property, and they've been renting it to try to make back some of the revenues that they spent on that property up there. I think they would like to try to hold on to it. I mean, like we could potentially use it as a field office up there when we're there. You know, they like I said, they're renting it. They're making back some of their revenue, but the access or the area between that house and the adjacent house is a little narrower than all of the construction companies would like to have up there. I think that if they were absolutely forced to do it, they could mobilize or demobilize out of that area. And so we've had some conversations about what the cost implication of doing that is. Certainly think that, you know, moving equipment into it, or if something breaks down, there's plenty of room to get material off of the beach. But what I think is probably going to happen is depending on the order of construction, they may mobilize some of that equipment through that access. And then when they're done with the Town of Duck project, I don't think they'll retake it out of there. I think they'll drag it down the beach and get to Southern Shores, you know, on the north end, and start building there. Or if it's built in the order it was last time, they would work their way up from the south, finish Southern Shores, pull that equipment up the beach, get into Duck, and then demobilize through that access that they have bought. So that's kind of the goal. That's what we'd like to see the contractors doing. Some of these decisions will have to be made fairly soon because we want to put, you know, the rules of the road into these bidding documents so that they know what they're bidding on. I know I've had some conversations with Cliff, and he's talked about potentially providing information to the Southern Shore Civic Association, to the contractors, to allow them to individually kind of negotiate with the SSCA on what the terms of that agreement would be, just so that the town isn't the middleman, because the town can't, you know, commit one way or the other for these other parties. But if they talk directly, it might work out a little bit better. But
Is the north of 4th Street, the 84 feet is about 28 yards. Is that mean tide?
So that would be that measurement is based on that mean, the distance between basically where the wet dry line is to the toe of the dune. That in and of itself, we talked about definitions earlier. It's hard to define those specifically. So in order to hit the mark, we use a contour. So the plus 4 feet above the water line and 12 feet above the water line. And we measure the distance between those 2 points on the beach.
There's no way to make that beach goer 28 yards is not a lot. I guess there'll be nobody in front of you. I just wonder if there's a way to expand it, to make that any bigger, like.
I mean, I think.
Without spending the bundle.
Sure.
The rest of it is. The rest of Southern Shores is very nice. Okay?
Yeah.
South of 4th Street, but north of there, north of there, it just seems kind of sparse. And I know that's the ocean.
They derived that 84 based on the average of the rest of the town.
That's right.
Okay.
So the 84, when we did that original analysis, that area up there was about, I think the average was 57 feet wide. And when we looked at everything south of, we weren't using 4th Avenue at the time. I think it might've been like 7th Avenue, but everything south of that point, the average in the town was 84. And so 84 was kind of like, okay, well, if nobody's complaining about the width of the beach in the rest of the town, let's use 84 as our set number. But I mean, you've gained another 10 feet now. And if material is placed up there in the northern area again for this 2027 project, I mean, it's going to get wider again. And I mean, if this trend continues, you know, it's
After the last beach nourishment, they were complaining that it was too wide.
it was too wide.
wide.
Okay.
Yeah, at the south end.
Yeah.
So anyway,
It's too wide.
I'll leave it at that.
And that, I mean, that is some of that.
I'm serious.
Yeah, that's some of that principle that Mr. Mulligan was talking about earlier, that the project is artificially built very wide, and then a good chunk of that moves out and reforms those bars.
Crazy.
So the length of the Southern Shores Beach is approximately 4 miles?
I think it's close to 20,000 feet. So yes,
20,000 feet.
yes,
Okay.
4
And the
miles.
length of the Kitty Hawk project?
Very close to that.
Very close.
20,000.
And the length of the Kill Devil Hills project?
It's closer to 2.6, 2.7 miles.
Okay. And then the Duck project is much shorter.
Like 1.5, 1.6
1.5.
miles. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Testing my memory here, but
Right.
it's good.
And the project you're proposing for the town of Southern Shores would lay sand for the entire stretch of the Southern Shores beach.
Correct.
Okay.
Right now, so I would say that the numbers that we've put up here today are what is in that beach management plan that was prepared right after the 22-23 project was done. That's basically there for FEMA to show that this is what was built, this is what's being monitored, this is how we monitor it, this is projections moving forward for maintenance. When we did that first assessment, that's when we came up with that I think it's 375,000 cubic yards is the volume for Southern Shores. And it's based on losing sand at about 3 cubic yards per foot per year south of 4th Avenue. There's another separate volume that's in there for some hotspot erosion that we had anticipated seeing in the central section based on some modeling that we did. And then it's also based on placing about the same amount of volume that was placed in the northern section as what was placed in 2022, which I think is actually a little bit more than 3 cubic yards per foot per year. We've been looking at that lately that, if there was some cost savings, that might be a place we could back off a little bit on the volume of sand, that would be. I think if you do those numbers of the volume that we're anticipating placing in the northern section, it works out to like 4 or 4.5 cubic yards per foot per year, just because the first number was pulled out based on what was placed in the last project. But if you back that down to that 3 cubic yard rate, we could reduce that number a little bit.
Piggyback on what Mark was saying, so if you're going north of 4th and it's already meeting the project goal in excess of 9 feet, what are you designing for at that point?
It's,
100 feet?
We could come up with
just extrapolating, we're going to put 60,000 yards universally across this.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. That's more or less what it is.
So you mentioned that the mobilization costs were divided proportionally. And so
Correct.
that explains why the costs of each town are what they are.
Yes.
Are the costs of design permitting also divided proportionally?
They are not. Those costs are split evenly. We typically, when we do our proposals, like the one that's on the agenda for today, we essentially figure out what that number is and divide those by 4.
Okay. And then you're using the 3.5 cubic yards per foot per year loss value on on this graph up here.
Yes.
Or 3.0. 3.0.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And so let's talk about your definition of a trend as a coastal engineering professional. I think you mentioned it when you were talking to us. You said you can't really look at 1 year or 2 year because it's not really a trend. So I would argue, as someone from the science background, that you can't even argue that 6 years is a trend when you're talking about the beach. You really need to look at seriously like long-term erosion rates. And unfortunately, we don't have very good data for Southern Shores. But the best data that we have, I think, shows about 0.5 foot per year. Is that something you would dispute, or because if you're talking about like 25 years worth of that's what I'm talking about. That would
Right.
be more like a trend, 25
Right.
years. Of course, assuming that you don't have a major storm, which can throw trend lines out the window.
Sure.
Yeah. So I keep going back to, you're defaulting though to this 3.0 erosion rate, cubic feet per year. How would you defend that choice?
That trend, I believe, is based on, if we look at this this red line, and it may be, this red line represents again let me see if I can. So here is the area south of 4th Avenue. If my recollection is correct, that 3 cubic yards per foot per year is based on the rate that we observed from 2017, the first survey, to 2021, which was essentially where we are right now in the cycle for the last cycle. So we were saying the best information we have is that over the last 3 years, we've seen a loss of 3 cubic yards per foot per year. That's what we're going to design for. And then the next year, we saw a gain in that area that put us, pretty much even, that wiped out the erosion that we had seen the previous 3 years. So it got us back to here. But at this point in time, the die had already been cast. Like we were already going to place that equivalent of 3 cubic yards, and we were going to reset the design. So that was what was constructed in 2022. We anticipated that from this point in time out, we were going to lose sand at 3 cubic yards per foot per year. Again, we had this kind of anomalous year that was more gains than anywhere else occurred in Southern Shore. So everybody saw a little bit of a bump in that year, but yours was the most dramatic of the other towns. And so at that point in time, we started experience. Now we have 3 years, like I said, that we're seeing, this trend of about 5.3 cubic yards per year. No one can say whether next year when the dredge shows up, we're going to be at this blue dot or we're going to be at this green dot, and it's going to keep this trend from this point, or it's going to be here, or it's going to be above that red dot. And so I think as all of the towns are kind of wrestling with this, money is tight, and we've got to manage our resources with this kind of variability. Placing something out there for this next project is our recommendation, to try to stay ahead of the game, because as fast as we've gotten ahead of the curve, we could get behind the curve. And so if we hit this, if we go forward and move with this minimum fill, I think, it puts you in a position to be able to deal with whether collectively the towns decide we're going to wait 6 years or wait 7 years. By you guys placing this 375,000 cubic yards, it puts you in a position to be able to hold 5 or 6 or maybe even 7 years. And then over that next 5, 6, 7 years, we get another look at these trends. If this trend continues, that like every time we do one of these projects, we get 3 or 4 years in and the net is positive, I don't think we'll be saying the same thing 4 years from now. I think we'll be saying, it's really time for, Southern Shores and Kitty Hawk to think about, extending this maintenance or skipping a maintenance or something like that. It was always going to be tough to hold all 4 of these towns together and keep taking advantage of this cost savings, this huge cost savings on mobilization. And I think everybody, the spirit is everybody wants to continue to do that, but it will get harder and harder as trends start to diverge and one guy's eroding away more than this person.
So last question. So yeah, we got 3 partners, 4 participants. So we got this question of 5 years, 6 years, or 7 years. So how are you going to decide? Who decides? What's the process? Does everybody get a vote? What if there's a tie vote? I mean, how's this going to work?
Yeah, I think that there'll be discussions between the town managers and try to get some consensus. Right now the county has established its cost share for these projects. They already have these, and they're basically all based on our 5-year projection. So if you look at the volumes in the left-hand side in the 5-year scenario, the county has determined that they're going to hit the cost share based on those volumes and those costs essentially. If my understanding is that if you decided to decrease your amount of sand, that the percentage of the project that the county would pay for would remain the same, but essentially the amount that they're giving you would decrease, because let's say it's 50% that they're contributing to your project. If you decrease the size of the project, they're still going to give you 50% of what that cost was. In the other way, if you go up from that, their model is fixed at that is the upper limit. And so if we build in 2027 and the town of Duck is going to put 100,000 cubic yards out there more for the 6-year scenario, they have to pay 100% of that delta cost. They're not getting, if their cost share was 50%, the county's not going to meet them for putting another 100,000 cubic yards out. That's going to be 100% on them, the town. So, what's interesting right now is Southern Shores and Kitty Hawk are in a really good place. I think we have no concerns about this recommendation of 5 years, that it should take you 5 years. We feel really good about 6 and even 7. Kill Devil Hills is kind of between the 6 and 7. 6, the trend for 6 shows it above the trend for 7 years. If they were to just put the minimum, that 636,200 in the 5-year scenario for Kill Devil Hills, it gets them pretty close to that line if we project out the rates that we've anticipated for Kill Devil Hills. And so they're the ones that we haven't talked with as much. I've got a meeting with some of their staff after I leave here today, just the order of who we talk to first. But the town of Duck, I think that their preference would be to stick with the 5-year. But I've talked to the town manager about this scenario where everyone else, it's not a hard decision for the other 3 towns because they could just place the minimum. And we're projecting that they'll be able to go 6 and maybe even 7. So the only one that there's a hardship in extending the timeline for is Duck. They're the ones that will have to spend more money to get this longer life cycle out of it. So, I think the town of Duck understands they can put themselves in everybody else's shoes and understand what you all would want to do. And, they're trying to figure out, if that makes sense for them as well. We also have some options in terms of what we put in the actual construction bids. So we could potentially put the 5-year volumes in the bid and provide the contractor an option item of placing that additional sand in Duck to get them to 6 years. And then basically we would be obligated for building at least the minimum of 5. And if the costs come in, under or right on par, and the town of Duck feels like they can do the 6, they could go ahead and we can issue that added item or award that added item to the contractor. They could do that work.
Anybody else have questions for Ken?
I just have a couple of basic questions that I've been asked and I couldn't answer. One is, when you did this project in 2022, sand fences were erected. I live in the southern part of this project. Those sand fences are now to the top. I mean, they are definitely to the top. Does the fact that that dune is bigger, does that impact your measurements at all?
No, so the measurements are done, essentially they go from the back side of the dune. So from the side that the houses are on, the landward side of the dune, over top of the dune, across the dry sand beach, into the surf zone, and then out all the way well beyond the bar to like 20 feet of water. So whether that sand blows from the dry sand beach and blows up into the dune, or it moves from the surf zone or the dry sand beach and moves out into the bars and the beach gets narrower if you were walking on it, we're capturing all that volume from the landward side of the dune all the way out to that deeper depth of water. And that allows for this tracking that's not just the kind of a visual estimate of looking at how wide the beach is, but to us, it doesn't matter where that sand is, whether you can put your towel on it or it's in the dune or it's in the water. We just want to track how much sand is in the system to provide that wave buffering.
So even though the dune area is larger and that's not really usable beach because people aren't supposed to be on it,
Correct.
that doesn't really impact your measurements
No, because it shifts all the time.
because it shifts all the time.
Yeah.
Well, but it's shifted.
Correct.
big.
Yeah, I mean, we've got the data. It would be interesting to see, it's likely that dune, let's see if I can grab that.
What elevation? Those are
Yeah, and
14, 15.
right, we still
The
have
dunes?
yeah.
Well, some of those sand pits are up above that 12-foot
Correct.
baseline you're using for usable beach. So as it's encroaching, I mean, you can see on the profile how much they've started hitting
Right.
into that 12.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. So originally our mark was from this 12-foot contour down to this 4-foot contour, and you would expect this 4-foot contour moves all the time. And a simple way to think about that is, okay, well, we built it at 84 and now we've got 10 more feet. The reality is that this 4-foot line is probably way more than 10 feet out, because this 12-foot line is probably further out because of all the sand fencing and the vegetation and everything like that. So,
And an even more basic question that I could not answer. We've seen what I assume are your boats out there. And I've told my neighbors they're measuring, but they've asked me, how do they measure this? And
Sure.
I don't know.
sure. Yeah, so there's two crews. There's one crew on the beach, and they basically have GPS grade survey rods that every time they put that rod on the ground, the system knows the difference between where the rod is sitting on the ground and where the antenna is. And so it can figure out the elevation of wherever they put that rod on the beach. And so they try to walk a straight line from the backside of the dune as far as they can get out into the water. And then on the other side, you've got the boats. They start out in maybe 30 feet of water, and they have an echo sounder on the boat and some other equipment that helps calibrate all this and calibrate for the tides and the roll and pitch of the boat and everything. But they're basically, shooting an echo sounder at the bottom, and as that return comes back up, they're recording the elevation of the seafloor. And essentially, you have these two crews that are working together to try to get 50 feet of overlap between the two. And that's why you see those boats come really close into shore,
Right.
because the further they come into shore on a high tide, the less distance the swimmers have to go out on the low tide. So,
Makes sense.
That makes sense.
yep.
Explain that to your neighbors.
I'm going to give them Ken's number.
Echo sounding.
Echo.
Echo
So,
sound.
Echo sound.
I like the echo sound.
fish finder. Tell them it's a fish
Fish
finder.
finder.
Fish finder.
Yeah, depth finder.
Well,
That's
the
right.
perception was you were taking photographs of the beach.
Okay.
And people were saying that wouldn't work. And I said, well, that's not what they're doing.
So
not
there was some discussion too. This particular event, we had a helicopter involved that was there's a system called LiDAR. So they're lasers that literally come down from this helicopter, and they're scanning instead of having one line of data like those surveyors are going out there. This swath of lasers that come down can actually collect data along the entire beach. So 100% coverage of the dry sand beach. It doesn't go into the water, so we don't know what's going on back there. But we have really, really high resolution data for the actual beach now. And that may come into play as we're trying to design some areas. Like right now, we're designing this project on profiles that are 1,000 foot spaced apart. But if there's some, house or walkover feature or something like that we want to try to avoid, now we've got full coverage of that entire area, and we could design around, some walkway or something that's out on the beach. And that was something that Currituck County wanted done because of some numerical modeling that they're doing up there. But we were able to kind of share the mobilization of that helicopter between Currituck County and the 4 towns. You all get high resolution aerial imagery from June of, the entire beachfront. And we've got access to this data as well.
Thank you.
Everybody done?
I just have 2 quick questions.
Okay.
The 375 is largely from what we need and with the beach management plan. Is that a minimum? I mean, is that the minimum number that you can design?
Yeah, so we have talked in the past about a minimum. I don't think that there is a minimum. So the way it's going to work though is the unit cost. These dredges are really big. They pump out a lot of sand really fast. And what will happen if we scale that density back is that they're still going to put so much sand on the beach, but they're only getting paid. So they might place 20 cubic yards of sand along that beach, but they know that the design was only like 12 cubic yards or something like that. And so they're giving away, 8 cubic yards of free sand. Well, it's not going to be free. They're going to increase their rate because they know that for every linear foot of beach that they need to place that small density, like they're going to get out of paying for it. So You'll pay for it one way or the other. It's just the unit costs would probably go up. So I think in the end, you probably would get 375, but maybe you pay for, 300, but at a higher rate than we anticipated you paying for the 300.
And then the other question was just, Mr. Mulligan's spoken to us a number of times about trying to follow the bathymetric features that are present. And I've spent enough time with you, I understand the difficulty of designing for that. Could you just comment more, like, is there a design methodology that?
Yeah, I mean,
a 7-year cycle will best
Sure.
meet his needs, but.
Yeah, I mean, he had mentioned back to 2021. In my mind, 2022, the project wasn't built until November of 22. So all summer of 2022 would have been pre-construction. I think that the real issue was 23 and 24.
Yeah.
I've talked to some other surfers that said they thought the bars last year were pretty decent, but everybody agrees that 23 and 24, those bars weren't there and the waves were closing out and the surfing and the fishing wasn't the way it was. We've seen areas where that equilibration has happened, very quickly in like 6 months or 3 months. In 2017, we had a bunch of storms that came through in the fall of that year. They didn't directly impact the Outer Banks, but they passed offshore, created some big waves, and those projects equilibrated very quickly. They had the bars back very quickly. I think it's just we're at the mercy of what the sea conditions are going to be like that next year or 2 years afterward. And we've seen that big gain that we saw in Southern Shores. It just wasn't very conducive of moving that much sand out to rebuild the bars. If his estimate is right, 20 to 30 feet out is where the bar is. I talked to him a little bit before and said, there isn't technology right now that can construct the bars as they are today. And his response was, well, we don't need to build anything out underwater. Like, we just need to change the contour of the beach. But if you just look at these, even at 375, the width of the beach that we're going to push it out, it will smother that bar out there to some extent. And so unless we're going to try to ask the contractor to construct the bar further offshore, I don't think it's very feasible, at least with the technology that exists right now. We would be interested. I mean, a couple of our principals are huge surfers with the company. I think they think that conversation's kind of cool with them to talk about. I don't know how far apart he thinks these contours should be in terms of some undulation in the shore. I mean, if it's, I've been out there and seen the undulation. Like, there's no way of doing it at like 100-foot or 200-foot spacing. If it was at 1,000-foot spacing and you created a little undulation, maybe there's something that could do. But the more detail you put into the construction, I mean, the more you're going to pay for the construction. So
I think some of the comment is the equilibration time. If it takes 24 months or 36 months, and then hopefully we can enjoy that for 48 months. That's where I think the 7-year maintenance. It's not just the volumes for us, but it's the less impact to our beach.
Yeah, that's a
our
good point.
residents and-
That's a
and
good
the
point.
People that enjoy it for surf fishing and swimming. So.
Sure.
It's never, in my lifetime, it's never looked the way it does now with that shallow shelf out there.
the bar.
It's, I wouldn't even call it a bar because it starts right on the shoreline. Historically, anyway, we all have anecdotal experiences.
Yeah, I mean, the native beach sand, that we had looked at was coarser than I think some of what was put there. And we've seen projects that have been there for multiple cycles where, the sand from the Barrow site is a little bit different and it can change the slope. And I think that's what we're seeing, a little bit of that change in the slope.
Thanks, Ken.
You're very welcome.
Appreciate your time and expertise
Very
and
welcome.
patience with our questions. Next on our agenda item is to approve, I think, or to make a motion to authorize the town manager to enter an agreement with CPE. Is that where we are? Wes, help me out with some words.
Yes, ma'am. That's correct. At this time, staff is requesting that you all authorize the town manager to enter into the pre-construction services agreement associated with the proposed 2027 project. We're requesting two votes, one on the actual agreement, and then another separate one that would be a budget amendment to move the funds from capital reserve to general fund.
Okay.
Correct.
All right. So council, need a motion to approve, well, I'll just make it. Motion to approve town manager to enter an agreement with CPE for, help me out, construction and design, construction, design, and permitting.
Yes, ma'am. Construction plans and specifications, contractor bidding, selection and negotiations, and then the pre-construction coordination as described in the agreement proposed by CPE.
Not to exceed
$62,000.
$62,553.75.
Correct.
Okay, so that's my motion.
Second.
We have a second. Any further discussion or questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. All right, second motion.
I'll make a motion to move funds from the reserve, from general reserve of $62,553.75 to cover the cost for what we just proposed.
What we just,
Pre-construction.
The previous pre-construction cost for beach nourishment.
And I
I'll
will
make that motion.
okay, and I'll second it. Any further discussion or questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. We have our two motions approved. Okay, so the last thing on our agenda today is council business. I'm just going to say our next meeting is Tuesday, August the 4th at 10 a.m. And please keep an eye out for the link for the NCDOT comments on the proposed project on the south end of town at the intersection of 158 and 12. Paula, would you like to go next?
Sure. Couple of things on the Mid-Currituck Bridge, the never-ending saga. One of our residents, Charlie Reese, who's a former ambassador, is traveling to Washington this month, and he has volunteered to meet with either Senator Budd or someone from his office and Representative Murphy to have the conversation with them about securing federal funds for the Mid-Currituck Bridge. So there is a group working on that, and Charlie has volunteered to kind of take the lead. Governor Stein had an event in Dare County last week, and we ordered little buttons that say "Build the Mid-Currituck Bridge." And I would say we got about 40 people at that event to wear the buttons, and he definitely noticed the buttons, and we briefly discussed it with him. And we are continuing to distribute those buttons. So if anybody wants buttons, they're at Town Hall, and we'll be happy to give those to you. So we're not giving up the fight on the Mid-Currituck Bridge, and we're going to go to the next step, which is securing the funding. And Southern Shores isn't doing this alone, but I will have to say we're kind of taking the lead here. And again, just reiterate, if you're opposed to having an overpass within sight of our town hall and as the introduction to the beach, please go on the website and follow that link and add your public comment in opposition.
Matt?
I would just say that next Tuesday at 9 a.m., we'll have the entry corridor meeting here in this room.
Tuesday,
July 14th.
July 14th.
9 a.m. Hope everybody had a happy 4th and enjoying their summer.
Thank you. Mark?
Real quickly on the tour board, we're always 2 months behind. So this represents at the end of April, but occupancy collections were flat in the county. There is some concern. There's concern about the number of visitors, and if you've read some of the local papers and the Virginia Public, whatever it is, the Virginia Pilot, there's people are reluctant to spend money this summer. They're reluctant to travel because of costs and everything. And so what we're telling you now from May looked flat as well, and June too early to tell. So, but May was flat against budget, which is okay because budget was kind of conservative. And meals collections are up 1.83. They were up 4% in April, up 1.3 for the year. A lot of that has to do with inflation. I've said that before. Inflation in the cost of meals. People who run restaurants and eateries will tell you that the number of plates are down. Number of plates that they serve is down. So that's inflation and people are spending less. So we'll keep pushing to get the visitors here. We need them. Helps pay for beach nourishment. So anyway, that's it.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay.
Any other business? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, staff. Thank you for being here, folks.